I guess we'll just get started. Today on the Don't Forget to Set Your Clocks Back an Hour If You Live in the United States Says podcast, I'll be discussing how wild YouTube's auto comment reply options are, why I don't sell any gear that I review, and other stuff too, so go ahead and stick around if you want to. Don't if you don't. Let's start with YouTube's very strange auto-reply options. I came across this because I was going through the comments, pulling interesting stuff to include in the What You Had to Say section, and I saw some automatic replies that raised a little bit of an eyebrow. I was a little bit confused by. Now, automatic reply options have been around on YouTube for quite a while, but most of them have seemed very canned, for lack of a better word. It would be, "Thank you for watching. I appreciate that. Oh, you are very welcome." Well, today I saw an option that it seemed to be quite a bit longer, and the first couple of words that it provided in the sample made me wonder where it was going. So I had to click on it and get the entire option. And the comment that this was a reply to was as follows. "Bandrew is the low-key champion we never knew we needed and probably don't, but here he is anyway. Thanks for being you, Bandrew." Thank you very much, Shaft9000. I really appreciate that. But here is what the automatic reply generated. "I'm just trying to figure out how this whole YouTube thing works. I'm not sure how much help I am, but thanks for watching." Now, maybe I'm reading a bit too much into this, but to me, that is crazy. An automatic reply that just says, "Hey, thank you. Oh, you're welcome. I understand that. That seems like an appropriate automatic reply." The reason I find this so wild is not only is it determining my understanding of YouTube, but it is also adding in some kind of self-deprecating, humble approach to the response. So it is actually saying, "Oh, I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out this whole YouTube thing." Maybe that's YouTube implying to me, you have no idea what you're talking about and you don't know what you're doing. So we are going to inform this person to not listen to you. Maybe that's why that is part of the automatic reply. But then "I'm not sure how much help I am, but thanks for watching," that's the crazy part. Because an automatic reply should not have any kind of emotion to it. It shouldn't install or have any kind of self-deprecation, but here it is humbling me. You know how I just got lucky. I'm just one of the lucky ones. We all feel that way. We all have that kind of, "I'm just a dope in my spare bedroom" thing. But this is an automatic reply. This is YouTube forcing that. A computer is pretending to be humble. And I'm sure I am reading too much into this. It probably isn't that deep. It's just taking a sample of replies from YouTubers and just automatically generating stuff based on that. But as soon as I saw an automatic typed out response saying, "I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how much help I am," that was just funny to me, and I had to share it with you. I don't think this is the end of YouTube. I still think that YouTubers will reply to people, but just the fact that that is a thing, it's weird and funny. That is really all I had to talk about in terms of news. There was nothing that drew my attention, nothing on YouTube, nothing outside of the election. By the way, if you're in the States, I don't care how you vote. Just make sure that you do your research and go in informed. Do not just vote down party lines and assume they're gonna follow what you believe in. Actually research each individual and each line item on your ballot prior to voting and make an informed decision. That's all I will say about that. Hello, this is post-editing Bandrew here, and this episode ended up being a little bit shorter than I was hoping, so I figured we would do something a little bit special and include a microphone showcase or microphone demo. I am using a vintage microphone that I bought used, the Shure 565. This is the Unisphere 1 capsule, the predecessor to the Unidyne 3 capsule, which is in the Shure SM57 and 58. This does have some kind of 4-pin connector, and it was converted to 3-pin XLR. And here is a perfect example of why I don't typically buy used gear for review. Because oh, we're back. So that is a perfect example of why I don't like buying used gear for review, because I don't know if it is going to be an accurate representation of the actual microphone, or if I'm going to be getting some kind of mic that has been beaten up, mistreated, and therefore lead to skewed results. Also, you could just end up with a faulty microphone, and that will lead to you wasting a bunch of time recording tests and end up with totally borked audio. But what you've been listening to is the 565. I did order Shure's modern version of the 565, so I will be doing a review of that. But as far as reviewing this one, probably not, but I want to include a quick comparison to the SM58 so you can hear what the difference in sound is between the 565 and the modern Unidyne 3 capsule. Did I get that right? Here is the vintage Shure 565, about 1 inch off of my lips. It is the 565. Here's how it sounds. And now I am on the Shure SM58 with the exact same gain setting, with the microphone in the exact same position, but I don't have that conversion cable. It has 45 decibels of gain, same as the 565. Let me know what you hear. Let me know what you hear, because while I am monitoring, I hear a lot less treble in the mic. It doesn't sound as crisp or as detailed. It sounds a bit more rolled off, but let's hear the 565 again. And here is another sample on the 565, 1 inch away from my lips. This was Freddie Mercury's microphone, if I am not mistaken. Not actually Freddie Mercury's microphone, but he used this model. It's what he preferred, I believe. So there you go, 565. And here is the SM58 again. As far as the 565, this was actually made in the USA. It also says Shure Brothers Incorporated, so that gives you some idea of how old this microphone is and why it's probably faulty. Maybe the first Shure microphone to ever stop working. So there you go. That is a quick add-on to this podcast to try to make it a little bit more interesting and offer you a little bit more information, a comparison between the Shure SM58 and the Shure 565, which is probably 40, 50 years old at this point. This is I think Shure moved their USA manufacturing out in the 70s. So yeah, probably a 50-year-old microphone. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know what you hear, and let me know which of these microphones you prefer. I cannot wait to get the modern 565 and hear how that sounds, because I think that added treble is going to be appealing to many a folk compared to the 58. Let us jump to what I've been testing. I am on an AKG C414EB, the class... No, I'm not. This is a microphone emulating the C414EB. It is the Peluso P414. This is a multi-pattern solid-state condenser microphone. It has 2 high-pass filters and 2 pads and 4 polar patterns: hyper, cardioid, figure 8, and omni. I am on the hypercardioid option to get a bit more directionality out of it. This costs $1,200 to $1,400. This is another mic I bought back in 2020, and it has just been sitting there for years. As I walk away from the microphone, at one point, I emailed them trying to figure out where this is made because it's not disclosed. It is assembled in the USA, and the capsules are hand-built in the USA. And the capsule of this thing is kind of the selling point. So as I mentioned, this is trying to recreate that C414EB model. That was the first 414. And the reason those are so legendary, or people love them so much, is because they had a brass edge-terminated capsule. I believe they were edge-terminated. And that in and of itself isn't necessarily special or amazing, but it was the exact same capsule that was in the AKG C12, which is now a $20,000 microphone. So when they went from the C12, which was tube, to the C414 EB, they used the same capsule, and it was just the predecessor. Not the predecessor, it was the next one. It was it was next in line. But it was just solid state. And those are very expensive now. I think you're paying $5,000-$6,000 for one of those solid state mics. So this is Peluso trying to give you that classic C414 sound that is now prohibitively expensive. Let me know what you think of this. I have already recorded my music test for this on the electric, the acoustic, and singing, and I thought it worked well on all of those, but we'll hear how it sounds on a long-form spoken word podcast. The top end may be a bit much because this is a brighter and airier sounding microphone, and sometimes that is not the most flattering, but that C414, that C12, those are microphones that people just drool over, so maybe, I doubt it, but maybe we'll get somewhere close to it. Because we all know, yes, you can buy a $6,000 or $20,000 microphone for $1,000. Okay. That's what I've been testing. Let us jump to what you had to say. First comment comes from Tim Stevens. He says, I love this microphone grab bag sort of podcast. You should do more. Tim, thank you very much for the comment, and thank you for the suggestion. I would love to do more of those microphone grab bag podcasts. I don't think I have enough microphones that I haven't used to do a bunch more of those. I especially don't have rare and obscure mics to do that frequently. Let me know if you're listening to this, if that is something you would like. I could just grab random microphones that I've already reviewed and do that. I have to tell you, looking at the YouTube studio, the last episode of this podcast is number 1 out of 10. It's the best performing podcast out of the last 10 episodes. And it was, I have nothing to talk about. There's nothing interesting to me. Here's something I can do. I have microphones. Let's talk into the microphones. And I always find that hilarious and also a little bit discouraging when that happens, because it's amazing that a video is doing well, that a podcast is resonating with people and they're interested in it. But it always seems to be the video or the podcast or whatever that you don't really overthink. You just go out and do it. You don't overthink it. You don't put too much work into it. You don't spend a week outlining it. You just plug a microphone in and talk into it. And that's what it was. And that's funny to me, but also that was the least amount of work I put into a podcast leading up to it in a long time. It did the best out of. So maybe I just need to talk less and prepare less and just be spontaneous. Who knows? I have a few microphones we could do in the future. Let me know, anybody else, if that's something you would want. Based on the ranking, probably I should. Next, we have a comment from Ernesto, my fave tech, and he says, Tom Buck sells his old gear for his Patreon subscribers every once in a while. Have you considered something like that for your old gear? Ernesto, thank you very much for the comment, and thank you very much for the suggestion. I want to start by saying I would love to sell so much of the gear that I have. I would love nothing more than to reclaim my living space, because this YouTube channel, podcastage, has taken over my home. This entire bedroom is filled with gear. Full of gear. A second bathroom is full of gear. My living room has more gear in it. I would love nothing more than to get rid of it. But let me explain why I do not sell any of the gear that I have reviewed. And the reason for that is I think it's incredibly valuable to have access to any microphone that I've covered so that I can include it in a comparison section for a future review. That is something that I find incredibly valuable, and if I did not keep microphones that I've reviewed, I wouldn't be able to do that. Now, I probably could offload some of this stuff that I haven't used in 6-7 years, but a lot of that stuff would probably sell for $5. So as far as selling that, I'd probably be better off just donating it to a local charity or something, because it would save me a boatload of time and a boatload of money in shipping costs. But as far as the other microphones and the other gear that I just don't use too often, I don't see myself ever selling that, because I didn't use the TLM 103 for probably 6 months. I didn't use the C414 XL2 for probably a year. But now when I review the P414, I'm going to grab the AKGs, I'm going to grab the SE4400, I'm going to grab the OC818, P120 and 220, C214. Those are all microphones that I use incredibly rarely, but I think it's important to provide that comparison in my review of the P414 so people have context for how this performs against microphones that are similar to it, in the same lineage as it, and might actually provide similar performance at a lower cost. Also, all the gear that has been sent to me by companies, I don't own that, so I can't sell that. I am unable to sell that, so that eliminates anything where I have said at the beginning, this was sent by the company, and there's a lot of that. I can't sell that because I don't own it. The company still owns that. So that eliminates all that as well. So although I would personally love to just downsize everything and just have a single 500 series rack, preamp, compressor, denoiser, limiter, and maybe 10 microphones and 2 interfaces just for backup, I would love that. I'm going to keep drowning in this gear because my purpose on YouTube is to make videos covering audio gear that are as helpful as possible, and I think the way that I'm able to do that is maintaining access to all the gear that I have reviewed so that when it comes time to pull on that gear and include a comparison, I have the ability to do so, and I don't have to compare 2 samples that were recorded 3 or 4 years apart, because the way I speak is different, the room I am recording in changes quite a bit, the preamp may change over the years. There's so many variables that change over the years that having even a week in between performances makes it not the most useful comparison, and that is why I re-record every single comparison for every review. That's why, unfortunately, I do not sell the gear that I would love to, please. I just want my living space back. This is the most first world whiny problem ever. I understand that. I'm just a whiny little baby. But that is why I haven't done that. I do appreciate the question, and I applaud Tom Buck for having the willingness and the fortitude to let go of gear, because I do not have that ability. I am an audio hoarder. Thank you very much. Now we are jumping to the value for value section, because this is a V for V podcast. What that means, I do not put the show behind a paywall. I just throw the show out there, you watch it, you listen to it, and if you get any value out of it, you put a dollar amount on that value, and I just ask you return that in whatever way you're able, if you so choose to do so. We are focusing on the monetary return of value this week, or every week at this point in the show, and the first one is $50 from TechMed Rainer Richter, and he says nothing. He does not appear to have left a message or a note along with that donation that he sent in on podcastage.com/support. So, Raina, thank you so much for that contribution, for that donation. Your support really does help keep this show going. It helps keep the bills paid, keep the lights on, and the lights did not shut off this week, and that is thanks to Raina as well as everybody else. So thank you so much for the support. I really do appreciate it. Next, we have $5 from Derek Weber, and he says, VO voice actor here recently got a Neumann, hello Neumann, TLM 103 based off your review/comparison, and it's so amazing. Really glad you made that video. Had to say thanks directly. Have some treasure. Derek, thank you very much for the $5, and thank you very much for the support. I am thrilled that you were able to find a microphone that you enjoy using and that is helping you on your VO and voice acting journey. That is incredible, and I am honored that my videos were able to help you hone in on the right choice for you, and clearly you are not coming to me for lessons on speech therapy or anything, because that is something I can use. I can't even say whatever word I was trying to say that is already out of my brain. That's the secret to how my brain works. It just, as soon as something comes out of my mouth, it's erased. And the exciting thing for me about that, same thing with words going in. They go in, I process them, then they disappear. The exciting thing about that is when I'm talking to somebody, they may have to repeat themselves, but I get to know that person all over again, and that's exciting. That's always it's always fun. It doesn't go well with most people. Oh, were you not listening? I was. I just, stupid. So thank you. Thank you very much, Derek. I appreciate you. Next, we have $2 from Incredibly Handsome, or Henrique Couto. I believe I pronounced that right. I went to his channel, and I think I got it right. Correct me if I'm wrong. $2, and he says, you were absolutely right about Corman. He would distribute so many films that he would consider the price to ship them. Most indie distributors back then would make as many prints as they could afford and then tour them across the country, often starting on the coasts and meeting in the middle of the US. Henrique, thank you very much for the $2, and again, thank you so much for this awesome info. It is so interesting hearing how the film industry and how distribution was different in the past. I'm going to throw a link to Henrique's channel in the description and episode notes. I'm going to need to find some time to deep dive on his channel, because going through the titles and the thumbnails, it seems like a channel right up my alley. So I am going to recommend y'all check it out. There looks to be some really great topics there. And also the idea of film tours, that sounds awesome to me. I love the idea of that. I think we do sometimes get that. Back in the early aughts, I remember Super Troopers did a tour of college campuses, and I think that was something I don't really hear about that much. Maybe it's because I'm not on college campuses. Yeah, that would be kind of weird if I just went to college campuses and looked for film tours. So maybe they still do tours around college campuses to get their movie in front of kids, but I haven't heard of that much, and I would love to go to one of those, or Joe Bob Briggs' The Last Drive-In. I know they do Mutant Fest, I think they call it. That would be a ton of fun to go to and just watch horrifyingly messed up horror movies and hear Joe Bob and Darcy talking about movies. That would be so much fun. That'd be so much fun. I'm going to throw a link to his channel in the episode notes so you can check that out. Now, we are jumping to my favorite part of the show, the Ask Bandrew segment. All right, welcome back to the Ask Bandrew segment, the segment where you send me, Bandrew, questions and you ask me stuff, and I, Bandrew, attempt to answer you. If you have a question that you want to submit, go to askbandrew.com. That is askbandrew.com. That is askbandrew.com. As I try to avoid burping, I do prefer audio and video because then I don't have to read. We get to hear how you sound on your gear, and that is just a blast, and you get a break from hearing me talk. The only submission we have, if I can make this bigger, that's what she said. Sorry, Bark, I am encroaching on your territory. I will not do that again. Comes from Ryan, and he says, "Hi, Bandrew. I'm writing to see if you could provide any insight on a question I have had for a while. Do you believe it's dangerous to unplug or plug in a condenser microphone while phantom power is engaged? When you film microphone reviews, do you disengage and re-engage phantom power when swapping mics? And if so, do you wait for the phantom power to drain before doing so? I have done some research on the topic and cannot seem to get a straight answer. Some people have said they have worked out of studios where phantom power always stayed on and they just made sure to turn down their faders before unplugging anything. But other people have said that it can be harmful to both the microphone and the preamps. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend." Ryan, thank you very much for the email and the question. I really do appreciate it. I hate to inform you that I do not have an absolute answer for you because I have not been recording in studios for 40 years. I am just going to share my understanding of this issue, and I am hoping that the many people who watch or listen to this show who are more knowledgeable than me will chime in and share their understanding and justification for whatever method they use. So my understanding of why people shut off phantom power when they're unplugging or plugging in microphones is, number one, to ensure there are no loud pops or clicks, and number two, to ensure you don't accidentally send phantom power through a microphone that cannot handle it. The second point is pretty self-explanatory. If you have some kind of vintage ribbon mic that has no protection, you don't want to send phantom power through it and risk damaging that. And if phantom power is always on, somebody may accidentally plug in one of those microphones, and then an expensive, fragile vintage microphone goes kaput. So that is very self-explanatory. As far as number one, avoiding loud pops and clicks, I do not believe they worry about this because it's going to damage the microphone or the preamp, but rather it could potentially damage your playback system. That loud pop or click could damage your speakers or your headphones, or if you have those systems loud enough and you're monitoring it, you could actually damage your hearing. So turning down a fader would resolve that issue as well. So that is why people are probably saying they just make sure to mute that channel or turn down the fader to ensure that pop or click that will occur isn't so loud that it damages any of the playback. Now, during my comparison sections, I have probably plugged and unplugged condenser mics maybe 1,000 times probably, because each video I do 10 condensers, and I've easily done over 100 videos with those comparisons. So yeah, I have plugged and unplugged condensers 1,000 times. Don't tell anybody. I hot swap them. I do not shut off phantom power in between each change. Once I plug in the microphone, I do let it sit there for 10 seconds, 15 seconds to get warmed up, to let all the electronics wake up. But as far as actually shutting it off and on again, I don't do that. So with my 1,000 plus sample size, I haven't encountered a microphone just dying on me because I left phantom power on and hot swapped it. But maybe it'll be on microphone 1001 where it actually dies. So I don't have an absolute answer because I have personally never experienced a microphone dying because I hot swap it. But I'm sure somebody has, and maybe they have a valid reason for saying that can happen. So if anybody out there has more knowledge or more understanding of where the actual potential for damage lies, please, why could I not say please? That was crazy. Please leave a comment on YouTube or on geeksrising.com/shows/BSP-407. There's a comment section there as well. And let us know what the actual risks are. Is it to the microphone? Is it to the preamp? Or is it just to the playback system and your hearing? That is it for the Ask Bandrew section, and that means we have one final section to this show, the weekly recommendation. I'll go with Marriage. A couple of weeks ago, I was discussing Terrifier 3, and in that discussion, I was talking about modern slashers. And when I was pulling ideas of modern slashers, I brought up Victor Crowley and Jeepers Creepers. This is my mea culpa, because I have no idea how, I have no idea why, but I forgot to include probably the biggest slasher of the last 20 years, Jigsaw. Jigsaw from the Saw series. What a dope I am. I love the original Saw movie. It is one of my all-time favorite horror films, and it didn't even pop into my head. Hey, Jigsaw. The reason it didn't pop into my head is I was going through my physical library and I don't have the Blu-ray or 4K UHD of Saw. So it just slipped my mind. I have it digitally, but not the physical copy. So when going through all the discs, I didn't see it. That's really why. But my recommendation this week is to go watch the original Saw movie, because it is a really great movie. I have not seen it in a couple of years, but I think it totally holds up as of my last rewatch. Yes, some of the acting is a little bit corny, but it was such a fresh and unique take on horror, on slashers at the time. I loved how it still had this whodunit aspect, but it was also kinda gruesome. By today's standards, it's probably kinda tame. I think Hostel was even more grotesque and violent than Saw, because the big culmination or the big climax of Saw is the saw and parts of bodies being removed, but they don't even show that happening. In Hostel, it is much more graphic with its violence. So I kind of think Saw got a little bit of an unfair rap, being called as a completely grotesque torture porn movie, because I don't think it was, at least the first one, I don't think the first one really was over-the-top violent. It did imply or infer a lot of violence, but a lot of it wasn't maybe I'm misremembering, but I don't remember there being a tremendous amount of blood and gore being actively shown on screen. The aftermath, sure, that was included. But I would highly recommend it because it does have that whodunit aspect. It does have unique kills, I suppose. It has a bit of that blood and gore and special effects if you like that. And it has incredible tension that is being built. It has one of my favorite, not genres of movies, but one of my favorite traits of movies, where a lot of the film takes place in a single room, and that means the story and the characters and the dialogue have to drive the entire thing. A great example of that is 12 Angry Men. There are no changes in the set pieces to drive the story forward. The only way to drive the story forward is through actual character development and dialogue. And they do a lot of that in the Saw movie, in the original Saw movie, where a lot of it takes place in a single room. Yes, a little bit corny, maybe a bit dated. I think it's great, and it just had its 20th anniversary, so that is my weekly recommendation this week. Saw, from 2004, I believe it was. Okay, that is it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for coming by. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I know you could do anything with your time. You could go hang out with friends, watch Saw, you could listen to music, read a book. So the fact that you choose to spend any amount of time watching or listening to me really does mean the world to me. I try not to waste your time. I try to offer as much value as I can. So thank you so much for coming by. Thank you so much for coming by. I hope you have an amazing Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Next Sunday, I will be back. I will be talking at you, with you, about you. I love you. Bye-bye. Whoa, whoa, boop.
This has been a Geeks Rising production. Your executive producer is Bandrew Scott. For more information, head over to www.geeksrising.com.